Okay, so it is time for some power rankings. We are looking at the collegiate scene here, and we'll do power rankings. You can obviously, I won't hold it back. You can obviously see my take right from the beginning here, but there are some interesting things to cover, which is part of what makes this worth doing. Let me pull that back up there so we can see chat. That's important. A couple things that we want to go ahead and cover that were interesting, sort of the big moves and shakes and things that have happened in the groups. We obviously went over what the groups were last time, but that was before any matches had been played. So what has happened? I've pulled up some of the most interesting groups here. First off, we had the Fisher plus Bobcats group. You can see University of Washington is sitting in second place. Everyone is used to the old Bobcats, the Bobcats that got top six, top eight. I think it was top six last season. That was an unusually good finish for them, but it was great. They haven't repeated that this season. They are really not looking at any notable wins. Have a loss over to St. Thomas. That's not fair. They do have some wins over Blinn, but they have wins over Blinn post collapse. Blinn's season sort of looked like this, got super hot, cooled off a ton, uh, lost a player, and now we're maybe like going back up because they've found maybe partially found a solution to that. So maybe that's not quite to scale graph wise, but their win this season is over Blinn, and then they have losses to University of St. Thomas, who would usually be another, okay, well, that's a solid team, not a big deal to lose to, things like that. But it's not the case here. We do see that University of Washington, who longtime fans of the scene will be familiar with, will know that they've sort of sat on the outside looking in, but never super far away. They've had ABC Swiss stages where they go like 9-1, but don't make top 20 and get annoyed because wait, we went 9-1, but they didn't play any good teams, sort of thing. That's not the case this time. This time they got their win over Bryant Stratton. That's not something that you can really take away from them, but it does bring into question what Bryant Stratton's total strength really looks like this season because I'm sorry, we just haven't seen enough. And how did they get into this group in the first place? Well, not with anything particularly interesting. They lost to Bellevue early in Swiss stage here. They have a loss to GMU Patriots, and GMU Patriots are probably a little better than people think. They got some map wins here and there. They have the win over Washington, but a team that loses to them, if they're consistently strong, if they're truly in that good Overwatch tier, and I will go over to my tier list here. We obviously have our absolute top teams, likely winners, maybe our dark horse team, tier gap team. I'm putting Fisher's top team in here, and then sort of the core of collegiate. That's the 6 to 15, 6 to 18, 6 to 20, whatever that is. We can sort of see the cutoff of these teams that are good, are real players, aren't going to win the championship, but have some ability to trade with these other good teams. This is sort of the meat of most of these power rankings. And the teams in this don't drop to teams below very often. That consistency is almost sort of a mark of what makes these teams, the core Overwatch teams. So we look at Washington here. They got the close win over Bryant Stratton in groups here, but then in Swiss, they lost to Bellevue, which, would have potentially been expected, but also lost to GMU. So they're probably not in that tier. But Bryant Stratton were at the end of the season. They really haven't put up any wins this season against good teams to sort of isolate themselves or to sort of keep themselves up there. I am unfortunately going to drop them out of that sort of competitive tier, which is a huge fall from grace compared to last semester. Now, I do believe they are fielding different players than they did last semester. They also picked up a loss to Georgia Tech Gold. Now, Georgia Tech cannot be denied. I will be circling back to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech before might have been considered king of the bubble. I don't think they can be denied anymore. The only non-bubble team that they've got a win on my power rankings is Bellevue, the weakest team in core collegiate. But Georgia Tech is responsible for booting some of these teams, enough of these teams out um, enough of these teams out of here. The Fisher's third team, will come back to that, partially responsible for Bryant Stratton, that they're pretty undeniably in this tier at this point. I think it's just too many wins, even if, they caught lucky stuff, even if, like, maybe it passes the eyeball test, maybe it doesn't. I think they've made it into this based off the sheer number of they step up in matches when it matters. They find those wins that they think are going to get away from them. They find reverse sweeps, whatever it takes there. Regardless, we were sort of looking at Bryant Stratton and Washington because they're in the same group here. We can, of course, see that Fisher Esports, as expected, is still very likely to win their group, but University of Washington doesn't look like there's anyone here that could threaten them. The most dangerous teams to do that, obviously, again, expectation going into this group was that Bryant Stratton would get the second spot out of the group. Other teams that maybe could have been threats besides Washington would have been expected to be third, would be maybe these Patriots who got Washington earlier, or Columbia. And if we look at, okay, does Washington still have those matches left to play? Are they in any danger there? Well, maybe GMU Patriots could be a problem because they did lose to them before, but I suspect what we're probably looking at there, my belief is that Washington is the better team, but they are below that core collegiate tier, and below that core collegiate tier, I have labeled these messy threats for a reason. These teams just aren't clean enough, aren't consistent enough. It's really going to come down to, how stressed is someone on that day? Do they see something? Do they come in with a good loadout? Was their warm up clean? Like, these teams have big enough holes in their gameplay that they we can run into things like we will see here where a Utah might beat a St. Thomas, but then get 3-0'd by a North Texas, then get 3-0'd by a Minnesota, but then Minnesota might lose to North Texas and Utah might beat North Texas. Like, you get these weird things where it's just not really clean enough based on the day. Now, that's not to say we don't have weird, go like that trades up here. But the point that I'm making is these teams tend to have some number of meaningful, oops, this is wrong, this is the thing. If they run into the wrong thing, they're just dead, and it's, not even close like we saw here. So we're going back here. The only thing that would really seem likely to shake up this group's results, did they play Columbia yet? Columbia has sort of been underperforming compared to earlier, and they already 3-0'd Columbia. So the only thing that seems like it might have any chance of still threatening Washington's ability to get out of this group with the number 2 spot is, can they win the GMU Patriots rematch that they lost before? And I am going to expect that they will. I think that's just messiness. I think their win over Bobcats is going to be enough that either they're better or more likely they were just having a messy day versus that. But we shall see, because GMU's other performances, well, okay, I don't think quite come to that level. Oh, sure, I can adjust the camera. Sorry, thank you. No, I'm not trying to hide the scarf. We can't hide the scarf. Thank you. Hey, Hedwig. Hey, Blah. Hey, Aiden. How did Northeastern get above ASU? We won. Hey, Aiden. Okay. So we look at this one again. Big thing probably coming out of this group is Washington stocks up, Bryant Stratton stocks down. What this to me does is it makes Washington, because Washington, has the bad GMU loss, but it makes Washington sort of king of the messy threats group, and we have demoted Bryant Stratton from sort of the bottom of this core collegiate down into this next tier here of messy threats. And that's what that does. So now we move on to our next sort of interesting group here. That was Bryant Stratton directly. That was... Somehow we got duplicates there. Now we move on to this group. This was believed initially to be the death group, the super group, the oh my goodness, this is crazy group. And you see that when you've got Maryville, Irvine, St. Thomas, and Blinn, and only 2 can get out, and it's surely going to be Maryville and UC Irvine. But then we heard some things. We heard, wait, UC Irvine is going to be missing multiple of their starting players, multiple DPS. They're going to have Romani on DPS. They're going to have Light in Korea, all sorts of things. And, oh, Blinn is going to be losing their hit scan player. And, okay, well, I guess this group just turns into Maryville and St. Thomas. Well, Either UCI figured out how to absolutely make their down roster work and work very competitively, or UCI threw out some misinformation to throw people off, which, hey, that would be a valid tactic. Or maybe St. Thomas isn't super connected, dialed into the collegiate rumor vine information network, etc., and didn't know that UCI would be down people and therefore didn't really prep or wasn't really ready for the match, wasn't totally dialed in, thought they were already dead. I don't know. But you can see here this UCI team, and I don't know that they're down multiple people. I know that was said. I know we had a UCI player say that on stream going into groups here, but they've been winning. If we look at UCI, they 3-0'd Blinn, they 3-0'd St. Thomas. They, have gone through, those were the only real threats to them. Maryville will beat them. That's not really a question. So we'd like to know what happened there. If someone has information on what happened there, if someone caught a stream before it was delisted or knows players on, St. Thomas, or have they played, or Blinn, who they've played, and we can get more information on what Irvine's starting roster looked like, that would be interesting. But the expectation after we got that information, last time we sort of talked about this, was that it would be 1 and 2, and that's definitely not turned out to be the case. And another reason this becomes interesting is, well, okay, why is St. Thomas? St. Thomas has for a while been in the core collegiate tier, that 6 through 15, 6 through 18, whatever it is sort of thing there. So what's going on? Why did they? Oh, right. They dropped to Utah, who then dropped to Minnesota. Well, that starts looking messy. Well, surely they have wins to prove that they belong here this season, right? Well, no, their wins are sort of over, like Bryant Stratton, who we just demoted because Bryant Stratton just is not last semester's Bryant Stratton. So that doesn't really make sense either. They don't have, they got World Bearvine, sure, whatever. That was groups. We knew that was happening. Did they do anything here? No, they really didn't, and they didn't play in much total. So what do you do with these guys? Well, I don't think they've earned it anymore. In fact, I think this is too many strikes against them. Supposedly they were up against a weakened Irvine and got rolled. Utah got them. Their wins that we thought were proof are against teams that actually don't really belong there. It's weird, but this is some of the biggest shakeups we've had, where we're going to ultimately have 3 of sort of our top 20 teams, top 20 teams that maybe we thought were in that core drop down here into this lower tier. Okay. So did we get it? Oh, yeah, we've got the thing now. So we look at that, and that's sort of the interesting thing that happened in this group. This was not, in fact, a death group. The expected original people are going to be the ones that get through, it looks like. Not much can be done about that because UC Irvine has played their critical matches already. Again, we'd love more information if anyone in chat has that, but we don't. They're missing Slater and Cyber. Yeah, I've seen that in scrimmages, those two not being there. I don't know if in matches that's true. I assume that it's true. They're on their roster, but yeah, that's some core that was definitely there last semester that if they're missing, it could certainly explain the lack of performance this semester. And don't get me wrong, they do have wins over Blinn, but they have wins over Blinn, after Blinn sort of did its here, and then maybe down here. Their wins over Blinn are like here, which that's not really helpful. Actually, this should be a little higher. This should be a little lower to start. It, was really, we'll do it again. It was really like here, went hot, cooled off down to here, did that, lost their hit scan, started to figure things back out. So their win was like down here-ish or something. Anyway, Blinn had their whole own power ranking video a couple videos back dedicated to them because they were that much of a shakeup in they were sort of the center of the hurricane that was causing stuff. Matches between them and Boise and St. Clair and Northeastern and Bellevue, and it was just, you guys can go back and check out that video. We've talked about that. They sort of had their up and down tear. They have no cyber and are playing gimmickle on tank and scrims the last 2 weeks. Yeah, that's what we found when we scrimmed them as well. Um, okay. They were there when we played them regular season. Really? Week 3 of Collegiate, week 3 of ABC. So when you played Bryant Stratton in week 3 of ABC, they had Cyber and Slater. Okay, that would be important. Let me go back to that. Okay, so when you guys played them, and that would be really important because it would mean that they got upset by Georgia Tech with their full roster. Maybe that caused the other two to not want to play anymore. I don't know. Or maybe the other two had some trip, had finals. Who knows what's going on there. But if Georgia Tech beat them at full strength with sort of that full roster that we recognize from last semester, that's, I don't want to say more reason to boot them, though I think there's too much reason to boot them already, I think, but it's certainly more reason that Georgia Tech is real, is there. They beat, again, a team that roster got top 6, at least top 8, but I think top 6 last semester in ABC. Okay, cool. So good information there. Happy to have it. If we could also get some information on Irvine from chat, if that happens to know it, that would be cool as well. But thank you, Jen, for getting that over. Okay, so now we wrap up this group. Nothing too interesting here. Supposedly Blinn has figured out a better solution to their DPS problem. I think it probably involves moving the players to do different roles. So like not directly having their 6th man on the roster come in to try to play hit scan, but instead have them come play a role they're more comfortable on, like support, and one of their existing supports plays again. But I don't know that for sure. That's my guess. Hopefully they'll have something a little bit more in shape for CECC to make CECC more competitive. Though if memory serves, they are in the group with Northwood, who will cleanly get out of that group. And then I think that would have been the most challenging group if Northeastern had gone, but now won't be because Northeastern isn't going, and we've known that for 3 weeks, a month, whatever. Miami, Ohio's going in that spot. So it'll be Northwood, Bryant Stratton, and Miami, Ohio. So we'll see who gets out there. Bryant Stratton should get out. That would be still my expectation, but you'll notice these guys are now in the same tier. There isn't a tier gap between these. I am rating Bryant Stratton ahead of Miami, Ohio, and maybe we'll see the return of Cyber, Slater, etc. for this because that's the big travel thing, that's fun, etc. But you'd think they'd be scrimming now if that was going to be the case, and it sounds like Woods is confirming over on Grandview that no, they're not doing that with Bryant Stratton, at least over the last couple weeks here. So we'll see what comes out of that group. But okay, Irvine is in California. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on, I think, from this group. We've covered enough of it. It's certainly an interesting group. It's weird that we ended up where we started, but along the way, we thought this would be the number 2 team. Didn't end up being the case. So then we move on to we've got group 6 here, pool 6 here. ISU is going to win that group, no question. And then everyone's expectation would have been Utah is the second team to get out of the group. And I actually still think Utah is going to be the second team to get out of the group. And the reason everyone would have expected Utah was going to be the second team to get out of the group is because they beat St. Thomas, and St. Thomas was considered to be real. They had proof with wins over Bryant Stratton and I believe Blinn earlier in the season. Hey, no problem. They're there. They've been in that, core collegiate 5 to 15, 5 to 18 before. So hey, they're there. They're it. If Utah beat them, that's a really good sign for Utah. And Utah shows up on the radar every once in a while and does these kinds of things. But the reason Utah isn't constantly on the radar, the reason Utah isn't always in the conversation is A, they don't play in a ton, B, they seem to focus on one semester over the other, but they're also just not consistent enough. We look up here and we see, I'm looking at Utah here, we see this bad loss to Grand Canyon University. That's not good. That's not what you want to see. How do you lose to Grand Canyon University 3-0 after beating St. Thomas? Well, it could be Grand Canyon University is just really, really good, and they're actually better than Utah. They're better than St. Thomas. All those things. Does this look like that as we look through here? Well, they lost 3-0 to Pizza Pirates, and Pizza Pirates are solid. Pizza Pirates are probably in the same tier. You guys can see where I think Pizza Pirates go. They are in probably this tier. I think Pizza Pirates are a fine team, but are they as high as we would have expected St. Thomas to be? Are they as good as Utah? If I had to cold read both of those teams, no, I wouldn't have said they are, and I still wouldn't necessarily say they are. But in this tier, teams are messy threats. They have flaws. They have too much of off days. Utah Sonic, yes. The legendary Lucio movement. Good for my team can't hit. No, his movement is good. But anyway. anyway. Um so we're looking through here and we're seeing University of Utah had that rough loss, and this rough loss is in groups. This isn't in Swiss. In Swiss, they lost to Irvine. They beat Cal, beat Terps, beat Toronto, beat Ball State. These are actually some pretty good wins. Like, these aren't like amazing wins, but a win over Cal, that team's not bad at all. A win over Rutgers' second team, that's not as good as Cal, but it's actually, I'm aware of that team. I know what level that team plays at. They can pretty consistently make groups, honestly. Win over Terps, yeah, similar level probably. University of Toronto, historically that's a team that is in the bubble. Okay, they, I believe, dropped out now, but that's fine. Win over Ball State Red, which is Ball State's lead team there, their better team. Okay, Ball State isn't as good this semester as they were in previous semesters, but that's only one player difference. They've got Spencer on tank instead of Monway. It's still the rest of that roster. Win over St. Thomas, that's looking pretty solid. Win over North Texas, but lost to GCU. So they have that, and because that's in group, that makes a mess of things, and they won't necessarily get through. Except things get messy from there, and we'll just pull this up from here. So we see Utah has the bad loss to GCU. So is GCU going to get through? Well, GCU lost to Illinois, doesn't matter, but GCU loses to Minnesota Pizza Pirates. Okay, so Pizza Pirates, are they going to be who gets through? They seem like the natural successor to get through. If they beat GCU, they're a team that could reasonably be in the same tier as Utah. If they beat GCU cleanly, they should be able to beat Utah. Oh wait, they lost 3-0 to North Texas. Huh. Well, okay, maybe that makes North Texas the successor. Okay, well, so North Texas loses to ISU, of course, and then loses 3-1 to Utah after Utah sees that, they beat Pizza Pirates, and we have this messy four-way exchange going on for who goes where, etc. So that's wild. That's wild. So North Texas lost to Utah, but 3-0'd again the Pizza Pirates there. What do you do with this group? Isn't it great? This is the messy, chaotic group. Someone is going to get through with 3 losses here. Someone is going to get through with an extra loss here, and that's kind of weird. Someone's going to get through with 2 losses, is it? Yeah, someone will get through with 2 losses. And that's one more than usual. Usually you have a team that gets through with a perfect record, 7-0, and one team that gets through 6-1, their only loss being to the number 1 team. Someone's going to get through with a 5-2 record. We may have a tiebreaker. This is the, in some ways, super messy group. I think this group is messy at a lower level than our other sort of big surprise group. So this is a fun one. And you can see what I've done here. I do think Utah probably is the best of those teams. I think it's just normal messiness, but I think the win over St. Thomas was probably the better proof. Maybe St. Thomas is still the better team. And Utah just had a good day. We can't really know. They're all within the same tier. We're just doing the best we can here. But again, we have win over here, win over here, win over here. Like this is just fun little mix up. We love it. And this is part of what's making it hard to do the power rankings. For those that aren't aware, this is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So 16, we sort of have 16 core, core collegiate and above teams at this point, and then we get into we have to pick 4 from here. Everyone is bad. Could be Bryce. Could be everyone is bad. Everyone is bad. Okay. So you want to fight with Semitic in real life? Okay, have fun with that, Bryce. So now we move on to the next group because we've sort of had our update in this group. You guys can see what my predictions of who's going to get out of that group is. I still think it's going to be Utah. I think this is probably the strength order for the teams in that group at this point. I do think GCU is probably a tier down, but we'll find out. We will absolutely find out. So now we move on from this one to the other fun group. No one expected Georgia Tech to be in the lead in this group. And you might just think, oh, well, they just haven't all played all their matches yet. No, no, that's not what's going on. Georgia Tech beat Grandview. Good on them. People didn't necessarily know how that group was going to go. Last semester, people would have expected Grandview to win. This semester, Grandview hasn't been scrimming as much, had a player out, whatever, and Georgia Tech has been looking better and better as the semester goes on, piling up those wins, no problem. Beat IWU. That would be another battler in the past for King of the Bubble, no problem. Oh, things got close against New York's lead team. New York used to be Ultraviolets. Now it's New York Violet something or other. I suppose I should check that. New York Violet Legion. So New York's lead team there. They're another high end of the bubble team, though, so that's not shocking to me. Of course, they just rolled their second team. No big surprise there. They've still got to play Ball State. They've still got to play Purdue. They'll win both of those. But what we didn't talk about is this. This is Fisher's third team. This is Fisher's third team. And why does that matter? Is Fisher's third team any good? This is their third team we're talking about. Surely only their first 2 teams are good. Surely their third team hasn't done anything notable ever and is, just like whatever, and there's just too many Fishers out there. Surely that's what's going on. And oh, wait, holy cow, they beat UC Irvine. Now, was UC Irvine at this point using Romani on DPS? Yeah, that's what reports tell me. I don't know if they had double DPS missing issues, but they had at least something going on there. But UC Irvine, at least with their full roster, is a team that you look at, and I have them here in my tier list because we have roster questions, but UC Irvine had a very, would have been chilling here, maybe up here, not up here, maybe up here sort of thing. Okay, that's a pretty hard to discount win, even if they were the player down. And we've heard constantly that the distance between Fisher's second team and third team isn't very big. This team had some real wins this semester, even besides UC Irvine. Enough so that let's look at the last Okra rankings. Okra rankings, most recent Okra rankings had Fisher Fiends as the 14th team. So, again, this is still a big upset. Georgia Tech was on the power rankings here, but let's kind of be serious. I think most people would have considered this the cutoff. I would have disagreed with it because I disagree with this order, but I think most committee members would have considered sort of this the cutoff for core collegiates, it looking something like this between these 2 lines, so 6 through 17. Well, okay, that's big. And I think a lot of people would have had Fisher's third team higher, to be quite frank. I don't know why Rutgers is so low. You guys are wrong, quite frankly. But whatever. I do want to remind you, this is Rutgers, the team that fields Tap and Neutral, who are on Citrus Nation, who just tore it up in OWCS. But whatever. I guess they hadn't torn it up yet by the time people voted for the last rankings. New rankings are being voted on shortly, so hey, whatever. Okay, so let's jump back here. So yes, what we're getting to is we're looking at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech with the huge upset over Fisher's third team, and then good wins over teams that could have easily previously been fighting them for King of the Bubble. No, Georgia Tech is above the bubble. Georgia Tech is firmly in core collegiate at this point, at least on match day. The results speak for them. And again, why am I saying that? What am I talking about results? Is it just the one-off thing? Like, hey, they did that? No, they've piled up too many teams. And you're going to notice I have them towards the bottom of core collegiate. And maybe that's mean, maybe that's not fair, but they've demoted most of the people that they've sort of they've been part of what's responsible for demoting some of these teams that they kicked out. Again, we see here they were part of what demoted Bryant Stratton. They got the win over Bellevue. Can't object to that. And then we scroll up here, and of course they're part of what's responsible for demoting Fisher Fiends here as well. And can they demote Fisher Fiends with a single win, or are they just better than we think? Are they Irvine tiers? Georgia Tech Irvine tier? Is that what's going on here? Like if they just beat Fisher? Well, no. And the reason that we're going to say that, the reason we're comfortable saying that, is we take a look here, and you'll notice Fisher, third team, has 2 losses at this point. And so how did that happen? What are we looking at? They 3-2 to Georgia Tech. So Georgia Tech won in a nail biter there, but then they got 3-0'd by Ball State. And I happen to know the play order. They played this match, clearly got tilted, and then played the match against Ball State and just got rolled. Tilted Fisher third team got rolled. That's a vulnerability that you can lose that hard after getting tilted. And I do believe that they might have been missing a DPS player for this match here, but their backup was another DPS player. I think it was like a hit scan filling in for flex DPS or something like that, or maybe vice versa. But you're using a DPS player in a DPS player's spot, and you lose, and then you omega tilt to be able to lose to Ball here. And maybe I'm not giving Ball enough credit. Ball has certainly found a fantastic win there. I have Ball sort of down here, totally respectable in this tier, but I have Ball down here. And if we move Ball up, maybe that loss isn't quite as bad, but I think it's really tough to give Ball too much of the credit for this when Georgia Tech clearly did that. And I don't want to take anything away from Ball. Absolutely right of them to pounce on it, to go get that win, to go find that, etc. But we see what Ball's other results look like in terms of, we saw, I believe it was a loss to Utah earlier. We've seen losses elsewhere. We could look into Ball's record while we have this pulled up. It's not that complicated. We'll jump over to Ball State Red here real quick. They did, in fact, have both DPS. There you go. Because they were complaining about warming up for Georgia Tech. Yeah, I know they had 2 DPS players. I heard that one of their DPS players was a backup, not their starter, but it was a DPS backup. It wasn't a support backup playing as DPS or a tank backup playing as DPS. It was a DPS backup, maybe a hit scan playing as flex or a flex playing as hit scan, but like that just doesn't buy you a whole lot of points for me. You shouldn't be in a place, again, I want to be clear. Teams at this level should not be able to lose to a team two tiers down without absolutely extra normal circumstances. Like being down a single player just doesn't matter. And I want to let you in on a secret. If ISU is down 1 player, they are not going to lose to UW. If ISU is down 1 player, they're not going to lose to Boise even. But, there's a reason there's a tier gap here. This tier gap is intentional. If they're down a player, they might lose to Fisher. They're not going to lose to Boise. They're not going to lose to Bellevue. They're not going to lose, 3 tiers down to Pizza Pirates. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry, it's just not. And that's mostly how this works. And that's part of why we're now not seeing Fisher in this tier. We're seeing them down here. You cannot be losing to a team 2 tiers down to you, even with huge issues. You just like even with a huge issue, you have to pull that together. It might be close, you might drop maps, it might look really scary, but you have to pull out those wins. Bad environment at Fisher, who knows? We almost did, but we didn't, Hedwig, and that's really important. Like it's the difference between oh it got messy, oh it got really close, and it happened, even if it was just a team fight or two away, is a really important difference. So anyway, we're moving on from here. These guys could easily find their way back up, but there's really not enough time to do it. They can't find their way back up in this group. If there was more season ahead of them, they might find their way back up. I think at this point they're probably dead. Okay. Oh, we were looking at Ball to see how Ball's results going. Are we too hard on Ball? Do we need to move Ball up? Maybe. So they got this win. They got the win over IWU. I probably do need to move them up if they got the win over IWU. That actually I didn't expect. Was that played? That was played. I'm gonna move Ball up if that's. I can't see when it was played anymore. Okay, that's not helpful. Okay. That's a second one, so I'm gonna move them up for that. No, go back to Ball. Not helpful. Oh, too far. That's the round robin this week. Yeah, but I don't know when it was played. Was it played last night? Was it played on Saturday, etc., sort of thing. Got well, except they got rolled by New York. That's fine. It's still a second win, so they have a win. Lucky, but they correctly took advantage of it against Fisher, and now they have a win against IWU. They got shut out by New York. They got shut out by Grandview. They lost to Co. It's hard. That's hard for me. Like if you're losing to Co, no hate on Co. That's going to be hard for me to move you up. Uh, can I not see their matches? Co, there we go. Co, show me something besides Ball. That's just really. There's nothing here. I don't think so, guys. Maybe the answer is Co needs to be on the board. I can move you there. That's one tier distance. You got the win there, and you got the win over Fisher. Okay, okay. I'll put them at the very bottom of that tier. Um, sure. Okay, there we go. I don't know if you talked about CIU yet, but we dropped out of tourneys because I'm graduating, not available to play because of travel back home. That's fine. That's fine, Winter Corps. I have you guys down here sort of because how things were going at the end of the season. Earlier in the season, you'd have been not at the very top of the messy threats tier, but somewhere like here-ish in it. But as the season went later, other than your nice win against UTD, as the season sort of went later, you guys weren't looking your best there. So that's sort of you've fallen down, unfortunately. But hey, you've got next season to figure it out. You're done, and your team will see how they put it back together with the new roster. Okay. So we move on here. We saw this. I think we've pretty firmly went over this. Georgia Tech undeniable at this point. They've shown up, found too many important match wins. Fisher's third team, WTF, they're real chance they don't make it out of their group. They could because the person ahead of them is Grandview, and unless that changed today, they haven't played yet. So they could force a loss onto Grandview, and if they beat Grandview, that'll give them the head-to-head tiebreaker, which would be very important because then when they have the same score, Fisher's team would move on. That said, I don't know that Grandview is free. Grandview doesn't have super meaningful wins this season, but they did cleanly handle Ball and New York's A team. And those are two teams that are in the upper bubble we'll say. So, or not, well, I don't know. Ball's not in the upper bubble. Sorry. So what am I trying to say here? New York's in the upper bubble here. Ball they handled with the 3-0. Handling this upper bubble one, and then some of their other stuff. They've handled some upper bubble teams on their way to here in groups here. They haven't had any good matches. They haven't gone against, they haven't beat any core collegiate teams. So we don't know what'll happen here. But if Fisher puts it back together, gets their mental stable, they could get the second place. But this is gone, and there's no getting it back for them. There's Georgia Tech shouldn't be in any danger against Purdue or Ball State. Ball State really gets mad because they see this and goes, "No, Temporal, you're freaking wrong. You're freaking wrong," and takes down Georgia Tech. Great, good on you. Good. Take the motivation and use it. Turn to anger. Let the anger drive you. No. Okay. Okay. So let's go ahead and move on from this group. I think we've covered it. I also see, and something that matters in group stages that gets a little undervalued is where teams are. Like, for example, Grandview still has to beat IWU, and IWU is one of the, that's a solid bubble team. Okay, I would have guessed they were a little higher up here, but they're firmly in this messy threat tier. So what does that look like? Well, that is interesting because why this matters is they can't get through anymore. Like teams that can't get through anymore are going to generally give less resistance. Not always, but these teams would actually expect to be teams. This should be have been the expectation going into this group was that this would be the number one team. One of these would be the number two team. But honestly, the expectation is that, this team, and, maybe Ball State's proven some things, and maybe this team are all very, very real threats to these two teams. But that's clearly not how this has worked out. Instead, Georgia Tech on top. But you're going to find that these teams that maybe could have been threats, especially these two, are probably not going to play at full strength. It's going to be hard to keep their players caring that much. So the teams that had to go against some of these teams earlier when they were still in the hunt had to play harder matches than teams that'll have to go against them later. Like we look at this, who still has to play against IWU, for example. Grandview, probably going to be fine against IWU, as an example. Okay. Low key, the IWU game was closer than the NYU game. Was it? Even though the scores say low key, the IWU game, even though that was a 3-1 and this was a 3-2. That can happen. You can have close 3-1s. You can have close 3-1. Sure. That's fine. Okay. Regardless, I think these were the two most exciting groups that we've sort of been through here, where we had, hey, this is crazy and good on Georgia Tech for just stacking win after win, kicking team after team out of core collegiate there. This group just wild in that, hey, are there necessarily two teams in this group that deserve to get out? Maybe not, but it's always cool to see these teams fighting for it, and I guess I have to put GCU in there too, though I'm more skeptical of that, fighting for it and having a messy group where, hey, it's up in the air and they all want it and put up your dukes and do it. That's fun to see. I think this group was like that too, but now it's cleaned up to the point where it's going to be, one of these three. Or two of these three. We know Georgia Tech is getting through. Okay. Cool. So I have another group pulled up here. Does this other group that I have pulled up here matter? Not really. We look at this. It's a little bit of information. Northwood and Converse are clearly going to get through this group. It's not interesting. Does it do anything useful for us power rankings? Maybe UTD is back. Maybe UTD has solved enough stuff. They're clearly not like, a top 8 team like they might have once been semesters ago. But hey, they beat Miami, Ohio here. They beat Rebels. They beat this. They beat that. I don't know. I mean, the only thing I really see here is the win over Miami, Ohio. And I know that was on a travel day for Miami, Ohio. So I'm less convinced. But hey, I suspect if that match got played again, it would probably be coin flip. Could go either way. Who knows? So we go on here. So I guess the only other interesting thing I could go into group wise is group one. Group one was probably actually the group of death after not a serious group of death, but after this group got demoted from group of death, like this would have been a real group of death, but ended up not being the case because St. Thomas underperformed slash maybe isn't real. Blinn lost a player, UCI has to do multiple role swaps, etc. So not so much a group of death. What we actually ended up with closest thing to a group of death is this one, where we have Northeastern, St. Clair, and ASU. And I know coming into this, if we look at Okra rankings, and these have been pretty consistent throughout, we had a situation where, oh, that's interesting. I think most people would have had that the other way around. I'm actually surprised to see that, but that's fine. We see ASU, St. Clair, and Northeastern. And Northeastern down here at 20, these guys at 9 and 10. Um, and we do see that Northeastern did just beat ASU in a 3-2. So there are only 2 spots out of this group, and there are 3 teams, and none of these teams, as far as I'm concerned, have been exposed to be frauds. Oh, did I get someone just hop in here? No, I did not. Committee members, you guys know, as always, you can hop in here. I try to leave myself in the chat there so you can hop in if you want to chat. Yeah, none of these teams, as far as I'm concerned, have been exposed as frauds. I don't think Northeastern beating ASU says, oh, ASU is a fraud. They're not actually core collegiate, etc. But that kind of does it for what I think has been interesting in the groups here. And then we get into why have I laid out the teams. I think I've sort of explained on the way how we got here, but I'll do that. Oh, let me do a quick catch up on chat. Who's perishing and blowing up? Uh, there are messy threat. Who? Ball State? Yeah, yeah. I mean, we did have a player in the bathroom for the first 4 maps there, but absolutely good on them for taking advantage of it. You need to take advantage of the advantages that, are reasonably given to you. Be that find a win on patch day, be that hey, the other team's player, isn't playing their best. You have to win when it's presented to you. That doesn't mean like don't do reschedules when teams don't want to. That doesn't mean like go sabotage them by calling their electric company and changing over the payment and then not paying it and having their power go out, or like, trying to manipulate the rules or stuff like that. But it does mean, hey, if the other team's having an off day, you have to take advantage of it. And Ball tried to do that against us, did that against Fisher. Good on them. Okay. So, scrolling back up here. Okay. UTD won by the skin of their teeth and Fozix wasn't even in? Right, right. You'll notice I still have Miami, Ohio in the messy threat tier, whereas I still have UTD down here in the what happened tier, a tier lower, even after that win. Maybe UTD should be moved up. It is entirely possible. I am skeptical. Okay, so moving through here, I did finally cave and put Fisher Esports, Fisher's main team, in what I'm calling the tier gap, because if Fisher wasn't here, it would be a tier gap, because there needs to be a tier gap between these teams and Core Collegiate. I hope we have a Rutgers-like season again where, we see teams from down here go, no, I'm going to take out 3 of you, or take out one of you twice and whatever. Like, that would be fun, be it Rutgers or someone else doing it, but I don't think that's true right now. I think these teams are all very close together and for the most part don't deserve different tiers. I think that's especially true after a patch just dropped and teams need a couple days to figure things out. But even on the last patch, these teams were not showing that much distance between each other. I remember watching Miami, Ohio versus St. Clair, who I think is probably the best team in this group right now, and Miami, Ohio got a map off them, was incredibly dangerous. 1 second map was incredibly dangerous. It wasn't really solved, and then went to the one map where they couldn't do the thing they were doing before, etc., because they didn't really have a way out. Now I know St. Clair was also playing with some subs, but like there's just not enough distance between these teams right now for this to be multiple tiers. In other metas, there would be. In other metas, we'd see a little more distribution here, even though these would still probably be the core collegiate teams. I just don't think there's very much right now. This is still messy, but anyways, what we're going at here, I really think any of these four teams could win it all. Winthrop is my number one. I think they're meaningfully more likely than the others to win, but these three are really, really tight in their distance from each other. Northwood just has good players. That's good players. They've somewhat played together over the various seasons. Maryville, of course, is OWCS should be quite good, should be very strong. Had a window where they were, but seems to have cooled off a little bit. Didn't have maybe the best showing in the most recent OWCS. ISU got a win over them. What are we looking at? Like, in theory, ISU should have a weaker roster star power wise than both of these rosters, but maybe it can win on teamwork. But Maryville should actually have better teamwork right now, but that's not what most recent results say. It would be very easy for Maryville to put it back together and be ahead of this. It would be very easy for Northwood to just decide, no, we're not losing and being ahead of this. But right now, I think this is the order. I just don't really believe that this Fisher roster is on the same level as these three. Nothing this season has made me believe that. Last season, when they were mostly a core team that had practiced together a lot, as a former Wisp roster, etc., sure, but it's kind of been too long. They're out doing other things. I don't believe this anymore. Um, but hey, they can absolutely, use it as motivation to prove me wrong. But these three teams feel like they're better to me. Okay, so then we move on. If UV wins it, if UV DPS wins it all, ISU Maryville and Northwood need to disband. They will not. They will not. Though we'll see some graduations. I think we saw Cowman is graduating. Okay. Just talked about Fisher. We move on to Core Collegiate. I don't think there's too much to talk about here. St. Clair, most of this isn't moving from. I really don't think much of this has moved from my previous power rankings that I shared here. I have some disagreements, obviously, with the committee as a whole. I have St. Clair meaningfully higher. I've moved UC Irvine down relative to that. Previously, I'd have had UC Irvine about here. I would have had them ahead of St. Clair, in fact, but I would have had them ahead of Freaks as well, actually. Yeah, I would have had them ahead of Freaks as well, actually. But UC Irvine, I don't know exactly. Like, supposedly is down roster, is playing down roster, and is playing what's left of the season like that, or at least multiple weeks left in the season like that. Maybe if they got to the Grand, they'd have roster back. But they've clearly found a way to at least partially make that work. So I don't really know where to put them. This is where I've got them right now. Could they? If they actually have all their players back, I'm ready to put them right back here, maybe up there. Who knows? But that's not where I have them right now because supposedly down players, etc. Okay. Um, Rutgers. I might have moved Rutgers up a spot or two since last time. They might even need to go another spot or two up since last time. I very much doubt that they've got much scrim practice as a full team this semester, but I just think the talent is going to be too hot again coming out of OWCS, and those players will just be able to carry. So Rutgers may very well be a spot or two higher than this. Northeastern, of course, just beat ASU. I've got them up here. Some of Northeastern's other proof has collapsed a little bit because Northeastern's proving wins for this tier before ASU were, of course, Blinn and Bellevue. Bellevue hasn't performed great since losing to Georgia Tech. Though, hey, that Georgia Tech has very much proved that they belong, and Blinn has collapsed. Northeastern maybe caught Blinn right before they got hot. Then they got super hot, took out a bunch of people. Then they collapsed, etc. So those were their original proving wins. I don't think there's any question of, oh, well, it's time to take Northeastern out of here because Blinn collapsed, so they don't have another proving wins after just beating ASU, though. So, yeah, I think we're good here. I don't think I really need to defend this one. Northeastern just beat ASU. Northeastern's just ahead of ASU here. That's how that one's gonna go. ASU, ASU's done good. Their crowning achievement so far this semester probably is getting the CECC bid to what through West. So we'll see how they do at CECC playoffs, finals, proper, etc. They had to beat Irvine and Boise to do that. We do have Irvine and Boise both back here. Irvine is not back here from that loss. Irvine got meaningfully better after that loss, I think, with the new coach that they brought in. They started looking cleaner and cleaner, but now supposedly down players, so that's why they're back here right now. Boise, beat ASU earlier in the semester, beat Blinn after Blinn started to cool off, lost to Blinn, when Blinn was hot. Boise has also not looked like last semester's Boise. Last semester, top 8 teams would have included Boise and Bryant Stratton, and they would have pretty firmly been there. They would have pretty firmly been in this tier above, at the top end and firmly at the top end of core collegiate in this sort of above it tier. Not like they can't lose to these, but like, hey, they're sort of above the fray a little bit. That's definitely not been the case this semester. The wins haven't really, the losses have actually dragged them down, and they really don't have. Their best win is that one ASU win. That's what they've got, and that was a while ago. And they then lost to them right after. So yeah, Illinois Orange. 2 losses to Rutgers, nothing else we can do with it. They, played Rutgers in Big Ten, played Rutgers in Swiss, and you of course know. So let's go see, where did they end up group wise? You want to guess? You want to guess where they ended up group wise? I think we know this. I think we know this. Let's for giggles go find their pool. Oh, that's Winthrop. That's not relevant. Oh, we've got to go find them. I I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, how strange. We have Rutgers and Illinois Orange in the same group. Weird. Weird. Huh, funny. So, Big Ten matchup, ABC Swiss matchup, ABC group stage matchup. These teams are destined for each other. These teams are destined for each other. Now, the one thing that is relevant is they did beat Bellevue. So that actually gives them it actually is their first real proving win this semester. Everything else has been against non competition. And we'll click in here to confirm that, at least on ABC. We're not going to pull everything up, but we can see that they just don't have proving wins. CSULB, Kennesaw, Penn State, some of those are okay. NEU's club team. They lost to ISU. That's Ball State's second team. Oh, and there's the loss to Rutgers in Swiss. So, like, what are you gonna do? It just that's just how it works when you are this. And to be fair, they haven't played Rutgers yet. This could go a different way, but we can see in this group that Illinois Orange did beat Bellevue. Rutgers has not yet played Bellevue, and has not yet played Illinois Orange. But I would be very shocked to see Bellevue beat Rutgers. I'd be quite surprised to see Illinois Orange beat Rutgers as well. I think Rutgers is just going to be better with how on fire, tap, and neutral we're looking in OWCS there. So they now do have a proving win against Bellevue, but they have a strong legacy at being sort of in generally towards the bottom, but in this core collegiate tier. In that 12 to 15 range, they have a strong legacy of being in there and belonging there. Usually what happens is they'll lose to pretty much every team they run into in this core collegiate thing. That's mostly what's happened. Mostly they'd lose in previous semesters, but every once in a while when you think, well, they might have slipped, they might not be doing it, once every semester or two they'll beat ASU. At least that seems to be what happens. To go, no, we proved we belong here, etc. Who knows? Okay. So then we move on from here. We're talking about Illinois Orange. Georgia Tech, we've talked about at length. Bellevue. Bellevue is going to hang in this tier. They do have early in the season win against both Northeastern and Boise. That has not been replicated more recently. And then they have a win against Blinn as well. So that's, why they're in this tier. They've sort of done those things. But we did just see them lose to Illinois. We did see them lose to Georgia Tech here. They have not looked as strong as of late, or maybe these teams need to be much further over here. Who knows? Who knows? But hey, that's sort of what we've got here. I think we've talked about University of Washington. We talked about why we demoted Fisher. We talked about Utah. We talked about UST, why them, Bryant Stratton, and Blinn have potentially been demoted. Blinn may find their way back up a bit, maybe even into here. Who knows? When they, based on the rumors I'm hearing, if they have a better DPS solution than they had before, but they took a bad loss here. They didn't just take a loss to this, they took a loss to, let me pull that up. Let me pull up my quick from results here. They lost to Cal. And Cal isn't a terrible team by any means, and supposedly they've figured out their DPS solution since then, but they're not staying in this tier with a loss to Cal, recent loss to Cal. Okay, so we're looking at this. This is what we have. I'll do a final catch up on chat. If anyone has anything they want to say, share, whatever, get it in there now because I'll catch up if I see anything interesting. Top and neutral were literally disgusting in OWCS? Yes. Wonder what group they could be in? Yes. Illinois Orange was very much in Rutgers' group. Talk about how good looking Ohio is. Ohio's players are great looking. It was nice to meet them on LAN. Good for them. We have our what happened tier here. Some things happened. Obviously, we saw UTD collapse and maybe partially rebuild. CIU was better and sort of looked worse as the season went on. GCU was in here for a different reason. They usually would be on the do something or below, but they got their win up over there. So they did. So what did happen? How did that happen? And then Ohio, this just feels like the right tier for them. Sorry. It's below. They maybe had a shot before groups moved around of getting through their group, but then groups swapped. They actually had a pretty good shot of getting through what we thought were going to be groups, but then their group swapped, and this is what they look like. They looked good heading into ABC groups, but yeah. ESC happened, and then you guys also had travel days and matches, and I think that probably your matches on travel day may have blown up your opportunities to do stuff. Travel is rough. This has been a rough season for people at the end here because ABC started so late. It's got a lot more conflicts, travel conflicts, and we have seen teams have, in some cases, been willing to reschedule, which is really cool, and Overwatch has had a history of being really good about that. Good teams respecting other good teams enough to work with them and do reschedules. That's been really cool, but we unfortunately seem to be seeing less of that as time goes on here, and playing on travel days, playing on days where you're at another venue and you're doing this. You've always had to play while you're at other venues, but it can really be it's chaotic enough, it's this enough, it's not your setup, and that causes matches, especially for teams that are a little messy, to make all the difference in the world. But we've seen less reschedule happiness this time. Apparently, I don't remember which two teams. There was a match happening between Maryville and another team in OWCS that had players from one of these two teams. I don't remember which. I think it was these two teams. And both teams were in a situation where the other team in Collegiate would not reschedule with them. And if you look at both of these teams' groups, both of these are almost predetermined to get out of their group. They're both expected to win their group. Let's not kid ourselves. And there's no one in their group who can challenge them. We don't have something where Maryville and ISU are in the same group, or Maryville and even Fisher are in the same group. But both of them had opponents who, if their OWCS game ran long, were going to insist that they play take a forfeit, etc. And that's really a shame to see. It's great when teams do more to sort of go, hey, let's work with you, let's try to reschedule, let's do those things. But it can absolutely make things chaotic, when this happened, and this whole ABC semester has been a bit chaotic, unfortunately, with the late start, with the first 5 rounds not really being seeded properly for opponents. Fortunately, we still look like we're mostly going to get good, solid teams through, but I am sorry to see that breaking down in terms of reschedules, etc. I know Northeastern tried really, really hard to reschedule matches from both weekends, unfortunately, because we had a LAN and travel around it and low confidence that we would have access to PCs at match time on one and then weekend and then graduation with parents traveling, etc. on another. So thank you to the teams that did reschedule with us. There is one that may not thrilled about that, especially because they, very much are in the tier, but hey, maybe they didn't have the availability. Anyway, okay. So let's catch up here. When did you all play at St. Clair Woods? Oh, yeah, when did they play? You got your annual map 5 versus St. Clair? Good for you, good for you. No tread, but went to map 5. Nice, nice. Week or two ago? Okay. They must have had some time to kill or something. What tournament? Huh. Not gonna lie, kind of nervous. I don't want St. Clair losing to ESU. That would be a problem for us. And ASU could beat them. I mean, Okra rankings. Okra rankings had St. Clair right behind ASU. I would have had this more like St. Clair towards the top of this tier and ASU more in the middle, about where they are, in fact. But that was last meta anyways. In this meta, Arizona adapted well. Arizona adapted well in our match and could absolutely catch St. Clair. And it's not like St. Clair did amazing when they ran into what ASU and us were playing when they caught it against Miami, Ohio. So, we sort of know what we need to have happen, given that we aren't necessarily able to play that match. But hey, okay. Oh, was the smart move for us to reschedule every ABC match? I'm glad we could reschedule them, or all but one of them. Like, that was really important, and it didn't work out too well for the teams at the LAN who did not. And we'll see how that works at CCC, because we have two of the biggest things in Overwatch happening at the same time. We have the second weekend of groups, and we have the ECC on the same weekend. We're not in CCC Northeastern here, but like in Overwatch in general, these things are happening, and there's a lot of team overlap between these two things, and that can get messy because there's not total team overlap against these things. Now, CCC should yield time to default group schedule matches, etc., but I'm already hearing rumors of not enough computers for that to work. So if you're at CCC, I strongly recommend you try, if you haven't already, to reschedule your group. So it's probably group matches to pull them forward, though it's probably too late for that at this point, as you're probably getting very close to travel time. Okay. We also have just been winding down the semester, and people are ready for break. Absolutely. Winding down the semester, finals, group projects, people getting kicked out of dorms because their finals ended a week or two ago. Like, it's rough with ABC starting so late. Hooter from Miami, Ohio says, yeah, UTD didn't talk to us about reschedule, so we just played off the trip from Ball State. So you reached out to them and they just said no, or they just didn't respond? Is that what you mean? Or like they didn't talk to you because you didn't ask? Does anyone know if Dante is officially done? I don't know. Um, any of you repping SC Big? We hear you. We hear you. Okay. Okay. That's gonna do it. Hope you guys enjoy. Got it. So UTD didn't respond. You did get Oklahoma to reschedule. Well, that was good at least. Anyway, that's going to do it. We've covered everything that I think makes sense here. If I'm not going to ask for any final questions there because I wouldn't see them in time, but that's going to do it. Hope you guys have enjoyed. Drop a like, consider subscribing, and I'll try to get one or two more of these out. Maybe I'll get one out in the middle of the finals bracket, and then maybe I'll get a postseason one out. Maybe I won't. But that's going to do it. And for those that don't know, look forward to the Okra rankings. The next one is, I believe, coming out this weekend. So make sure you are following at OWCRA on X so that you see those things there. Cool.